from the earnings call last evening. Meanwhile, Disney announced it plans on cutting 28,000 jobs in its parks division in California and Florida, leaving employees feeling decidedly less optimistic. Joining us now is Matt Hollis, president of the Services Trade Council Union that represents 43,000 Disney World workers. Matt, it's a difficult time for everybody. It's not that Disney wants to let go people either, right? It's that it's being forced to do so. Give us an update on what the situation is now for employees of all types, from cast members to restaurant employees and so on, in the Orlando region and beyond.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, for the opportunity to be able to comment today. Times are tough, that's for sure. When you look at the landscape of Central Florida, there's no question Disney World leads the way in the tourism industry there. And with Disney having to take such huge step backs and really drastic cuts that are being taken, it is impacting the entire region. And like I say, Disney leads the way there. And so the cast members that have found themselves on furlough, a lot of them have been furloughed since remember March or April. And so times are really, really tough. And without the tourism industry in Central Florida, it's going to be tough for a little while.
And when you say furlough, that's important, Matt. I mean, part of your negotiations is that Disney does have, they have promised to rehire a great number of these workers if and when the businesses reopen. How hard was that to get as a concession, and how firm is that commitment, depending on how long this pandemic lasts?
Well, what we were able to do was to secure the recall rights for employees that would avoid what is being witnessed or seen in some of the other parks in Central Florida that don't have a union representation. And so before Disney would be hiring new hire employees, the members that we represent under the Service Trades Council, those employees would have the opportunity to be able to return to work. And so as far as the makeup of the negotiations, there's always the give and take and kind of back and forth. But Disney certainly recognizes the value that their cast members bring and the experience that they have. And so we were proud to be able to deliver that for all of the members working under our agreement.
Yeah, it's just so tough. We see awful stories about people living in motels, from very short amount of time periods, because the motels can't have people longer than 2 weeks, or eviction proceedings have to start and so on. It's so difficult. How many of your members, Matt, are really suffering, whether it be, lack of stimulus money, or the fact that they're facing eviction, or literally can't eat?
So there's still about 18,500 of the cast members that we represent that remain on furlough at this time. And so when you think of Florida, you have to understand that Florida's unemployment system was one of the worst in the country. And so shortly into the pandemic, these cast members had exhausted unemployment resources. And so that remains to be the case today for those that remain out of work. And again, back to the comments that I made earlier, the tourism industry in Central Florida is what makes up the bulk of the business there. And so it is an absolute, it really is a tragedy for thousands of workers and thousands of Floridians that are in desperate need of help and that are unable to find work. And hopefully a vaccine is rolled out, and hopefully the traveling public can pick up and the business can resume to a normal level at Disney World. But until then, there are, again, tens of thousands of workers in Central Florida that are being very drastically impacted by the current pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Matt, that is in the context of no stimulus package. So government supports that had been available to Americans, not available at the moment. Businesses that were seeking support, not getting them now. What's your message to, lawmakers are still presumably going to wrestle through something. How important is it for the folks you represent that some form of fiscal stimulus is brought around?
Well, so I would say that workers in not just Central Florida, but if you look at Florida, you could see a real impact in a very concentrated area. But you don't have to look at just Florida to see that. It's impacting literally every state in our country. And there's one thing that every state has in common right now, and that is that workers are hurting and workers need help. And we've had people that have been out of work since March and April, and don't really see any relief as far as recall in sight in the near future until there is an increase in the traveling public. The union that I work for doesn't just represent Disney World workers. We have a lot of workers in other industries. For instance, the commuter railroads or Amtrak. Those industries are likewise being impacted in a great way. And relief is needed, but it's not just relief for business. We need real meaningful relief that finds its way into helping the working families in America that are being impacted today and for the foreseeable future.
Matt, obviously you said tourism around the Orlando and greater Orlando, Florida region, is huge, but healthcare is another thing that Orlando is very famous for. How many of the people that have been furloughed or laid off, how many of them might be able to switch industries or perhaps be mobile and move to another state for work? Is that even possible? Do they have the means?
Well, as far as the possibility of that, that's not something that I or my staff have had a lot of conversation around. As far as we are not familiar with a ton of opportunities that are presenting themselves to furloughed or laid off Disney cast members to cross state lines to find work. I suspect that there may be some instances of that, but that's not the most practical given the current economic status. These people.
Not a lot of time here. We have a president-elect. He will form a cabinet. We assume Bernie Sanders has been floated as a potential labor secretary. Thoughts on the direction of this next government when it comes to labor?
Sure. So I think that it's safe to say that most all of the labor in this country is sharing an optimism that President-elect Biden will implement worker-friendly platforms and policies, and that he'll appoint worker-conscious people in positions of leadership that are directly involved with the jobs of the members that we represent every single day throughout this country. And so we're hopeful for the best, and we wish him the best as he builds that transition.